The holy and secret process of choosing the next pope starts tomorrow with 115 cardinals. Pope Francis seems to have accepted someone she doesn't know, but who could change the Catholic Church's future. People are often interested in and sometimes upset about his close relationship with Cardinal Luis Tagle. To our country, the city of Manila, and the Cathedral Basilica of the Immaculate Conception, I welcome you. Finally, the Pope has decided to bring Cardinal Luis Tagle to light. What makes Pope Francis think this is the right time to say this? What does this mean for the Church's power around the world? Come along as we go into great detail about how Pope Francis told the people the truth about Cardinal Luis Tagle are related. There are many layers of loyalty between Pope Francis and Cardinal Luis Tagle is based on shared beliefs, mutual respect, and a desire to take the Catholic Church in a new direction. The principles that Cardinal Tagle and the Pope stand for are the same. He is humble, friendly, and very aware of what people need. Pope Francis has had the idea of the Church for the poor since the start of his term. What Tagle did in Manila before he became a cardinal showed that he was able to reach out to the poor and bring them his message. And because Tagle had a big impact on the Pope, he strongly believes in the power of priests, and not just when they give motivational speeches. Their friendship comes from the fact that they both want to build a church that will still be important in hard times. When Tagle was named prefect of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples in 2019, their partnership reached a new level. The new head of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples is Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, who was chosen by Francis. This person is known as the Red Pope, and they have a lot of power, including the ability to control missionary work on different countries. Pope Francis gave Tagle this important job as a hint that he would be in charge of furthering Catholic preaching, especially in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, which are the future of the Catholic Church. Also, they are not just dating because of work. What Tagle values has a lot in common with what Francis has pushed for. It's more important to talk about things than to preach them, to be kind than to be angry, and to act than to talk. They both have a strong vision of a church of love because they have both dealt with angry responses from traditionalist groups. As a result, Tagle's way of leading is not different from Pope Francis's in terms of being humble and caring. One example is when Typhoon Haiyan hit in 2013. Tagle's quick action and kindness during disasters made him seem like a leader of the Church of Mercy, just as Francis had said they should be. Tagle was a great example for liberal Catholics all over the world because of how well he understood religion and how he preached to everyone. Pope Francis has made it clear more than once that the leadership of the Church cannot stay clerical. Instead, they must show mercy to those who have been ignored and abandoned by society. Pope Francis recently said some things that have brought up the question of where Tagle fits in the Vatican system again. Even though the Pope hasn't said what he wants the Cardinal to do in the long run, it looks like the work they are both doing was planned ahead of time. Does Ike Tagle's path through the Church show that things might be changing from Manila to the rest of the world? From the streets of Manila to the halls of the Vatican, Cardinal Luis Tagle is an inspired person who has to live with a purpose. The Philippines is where Tagle was born in 1957, and his life shows that he was deeply rooted in his society, for the poor and committed to them. He was born with a very sharp mind and a good heart. He knew from a young age that he wanted to study religion and become a leader in the Catholic Church. Tagle started his real journey as a leader when he was named Archbishop of Manila in 2011. Filipino workers living abroad are happy that Manila Archbishop Luis Antonio Tagle has been made a cardinal. A priest adds that Tagle's will be hard. When Tagle became the leader of one of the world's biggest Catholic regions, he quickly became a reformer. He did not give in to the greed and materialism that ruled in the past. In its place, he tried to bring back care for the church and people, spiritual work, and a strong desire to see justice done. The sermons of Tagle are moving and comforting. He was able to relate to millions of people's lives, which made him very famous. People began calling him Asia's Francis. His rise to fame around the world happened after a series of ads that showed how powerful he was becoming in the Vatican. Tagle backed efforts to fight poverty, hunger, and climate change while he was head of Caritas Internationalis, a Catholic charity group with chapters in 165 countries. Because he was thought to be good at helping people from different cultures and beliefs talk to each other in the church, he was chosen to lead the evangelization efforts. It was a big change when he was named prefect of the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples in 2019. Because of his job, he was in the middle of the church's mission to spread the message to everyone in the world. Tagle valued differences in culture and finally played a big role in changing how the church spread the gospel in Asian and African countries that aren't Western. Now, what does this level of fame mean? He is able to work in a globalized world, which is the answer. Together, these political moves and Tagle's sound theological mind have made him a leader capable of handling the difficulties the church faces. People are guessing about Tagle's job as his power at the Vatican grows. He might get even more engaged, or he might even run for Pope again. And if so, what does a church look like when Tagle is in charge? A church for people on the edges. With Pope Francis in charge, the Catholic Church has changed and is now looking more at those on the edges. This idea has been helped by having Cardinal Tagle by its side. It is sometimes called a church for the poor. They are all called to work for justice, kindness, and mercy in the world, even though they have the power to change the church's social relationships in big ways. These can be seen in Pope Francis's attention on the edges. He thinks that the church should be on the edges as a safe place for people who are on the outside. He has led efforts to fight hunger, given refugees a place to stay, and dealt with the problems caused by climate change as president of Caritas Internationalis. Because of this and his ability to get resources and get people to do things, he is a key player in the church's charity projects. President Tagle often talks about how important it is to listen as part of his job. You are ready to love if you listen. People who love will never get tired of hearing it. Tagle values conversation and actively tries to listen, especially to voices on the edges. This is different from more common models of vertical power dynamics. Still, the focus on the edges isn't without its problems. Critics of the church have said that if its message is presented to society in this way, it's possible that social issues will win out over the church's teachings. People who don't like the church say that Pope Francis and his followers are losing sight of traditional Catholic values by spending so much on being politically correct. However, Pope Francis and Cardinal Tagle have not changed their minds because they know that the church will lose relevance if it doesn't deal with these and other modern problems. Tagle can help spread the Pope's vision in addition to doing good things for people. His attempts to improve relations between religions show that the Church is determined to promote good relationships in a world that is becoming more divided. This is why Tagle mirrors Pope Francis's main message. Talking about religious issues with people of other faiths can help build unity and tolerance. The ideas of Pope Francis and Cardinal Tagle try to connect the Church with people more directly. In a way, modern Catholicism is being built right in front of our eyes. In a world of fast change, could this focus on the edges give us a new way to think about the Church's mission? An unspoken tug of war. Behind the religious faces and the look of being together, the Roman Catholic Church's power has always been built on a fight for control. At the Vatican, which is at the meeting point of tradition and postmodern society, these kinds of fights are shown through ideas. The daily fights between conservatives and reformists, like Cardinal Tagle and Pope Francis, are a fascinating story of struggles that aren't spoken about. As Pope, Pope Francis has made more reforming changes by speaking out against clericalism, asking for a less centralized church, and criticizing things like immigration, climate change, and the lack of openness in the economy. As a harsh warning, the leader of the Catholic Church and ruler of the Vatican city-state has said that if nothing is done about climate change, the earth will become unlivable. No matter what, these attempts have run into big problems. Some of the most conservative parties and groups in the Church of Rome have been very vocal about their dislike of this change, which they see as a big break from the Bible, which is God's Word. This part of the power fight is shown by Cardinal Tagle's work in the Vatican. Even though Tagle agrees with Pope Francis that the Church should be kind and focus on the edges, not everyone likes this. Unfortunately, his sensible way of managing and focus on dialogue and involvement go against more common ideas about Catholic theology. Because of this, people have higher hopes and are wondering what problems the leader of the Church might face. One of the most important areas of this power fight has been keeping an eye on finances. Pope Francis started the process of cleaning up the Vatican's banks, which has caused a lot of argument. Since Tagle is part of the management team that oversees charitable operations, he will back the reform efforts because he has been pushing for more and better disclosure. But this has also made him hostile toward those who want to protect their own interests, namely the powerful groups that are heavily rooted in power. The factors are made more complicated by succession. Pope Francis hasn't said anything about who will take over after him, but the fact that Tagle and other people are becoming more well-known makes us think about what kind of future the Church will be moving toward. Conservatives may want to keep or support candidates who they don't think will keep the framework's changes going, like Pope Francis did. Behind-the-scenes power battle shows the fight that will decide who will lead the Church in the future. These fights for power aren't just happening in the Vatican. They cover areas all over the world and change how the leaders of those dioceses handle things around the world. A lot of traditionalists were still active, but the change that made unity in traditional Catholicism less united became the symbol of this time in the Catholic Church. What effects do you think these changes will have on the Church as it tries to meet the challenges of the 21st century? What do leaders like Cardinal Tagle have to offer during these changes? A prophet in the midst of chaos. Father Luis? Tagle still has a long way to go in the Catholic Church. Still, this young cardinal has made a difference. Catholicism stands for helping the poor and the outcast, protecting human rights, welcoming refugees, and standing up for those who are mistreated in his country. Tagle is looked up to by progressive Catholics all over the world. But he is using this power while the institution is under a lot of stress from long-standing internal and external problems. Tagle is good at talking to people, so he is friendly with people from all walks of life, whether he is speaking to a group of followers in Manila or representing the Pope. Tagle was humble and got along well with his fans. A lot of people have been missing the shepherd-like way of leading that he often taught, not the strict institutionalist way that rules the Church. Tagle has made himself look like a rebel in the new Catholic Church by praising a religion that is open and moving. However, this heritage is being built during a time of great change. In Europe and North America, the number of priests and other church representatives is steadily going down, while the number of faithful people in Asia and Africa is gradually rising. It's both a strength and a weakness that the Church is getting older and more diverse. It makes it easier to serve a large and varied group of people. The fact that Tagle is not from the West means that he understands other cultures and is well known in those cultures, making him a good candidate for this job. Another thing that makes the process guide that is thought to be by Tagle unique is that it combines custom with modern trends. Interfaith discussion and climate change are two of the roles he has taken on. It's good that fairness and equity will be a big part of the climate change meeting in Paris. Some things about this man's life have shown that he is ready to work with change. But this has also been criticized. Conservatives in the Church have said that he has strayed from the teachings of the Church. This is an example of the problems that exist during this time of Catholic rule. How Tagle handled these different needs will determine his reputation in the years to come. Since changes are still happening in the Catholic Church, the question of leadership comes up. The good work that began under Pope Francis needs to be continued by other leaders who will work for the group in the future. Because Tagle has a lot of power in the Vatican and is loyal to Francis's image, he might be the one who changes the future of the Catholic Church. But will his ideas be accepted by the huge and often divided group of Roman Catholics around the world? A lot has been said about Cardinal Tagle's tracts, but they are still being built. For him, the challenges are very big because he is in charge of an organization that has rules, conventions, and an environment that changes along with the world but still needs to stay organized. What will define him is his ability to give people hope and bring them together. Can his leadership bring about a new Catholic Church that heals, welcomes, and comes alive? Tagle's well-known rival for the throne of Pope. There are many people who are thought to be in the running to replace Pope Francis. Cardinal Pietro Parolin, who is seen as a strong competitor to Cardinal Luis Tagle, is one of the best candidates. Parolin is the Vatican's Secretary of State, which is the highest position in the government. He is in charge of the Vatican's organization and foreign relations. Besides being a cardinal, he has been in a lot of public situations, which makes him a frontrunner for the Pope chair. Not like Tagle, who is more of a reformist with a rural bent of mind. Before he joined the Synod of Bishops, Parolin was known for his traditional views and a lot of experience in international relations. Since he is from Italy, it seems likely that he is from the core of the Catholic Church that is having trouble with how society is changing now. Traditionalists admire him because he was Secretary of State and was able to shape the Church through its complicated geopolitical relationships and keep his power around the world. People think that Tagle is more on the edges, while Parolin is seen as a genius who knows how to deal with the church hierarchy. Another thing about him is that ever since he took over, he has been setting up and managing different church cliques. Being a bridge builder, he has done his best to deal with both the problems of one side and the problems of the other side. He especially tries to find the middle ground when there are problems that cause disagreement. People who like small changes over big ones like how well he can handle the politics inside the government. Some, though, say that his ideas aren't creative enough to deal with the problems the church faces now, in a time of world changes. This fight between Tagle and Parolin can be seen as a mirror of the problems